Welcome back, audience. Cheers, as always. Hope you're doing good. And I have a little one for you today. And I'm just trying to gather my thoughts to explain this in the best way I can. But what I'm trying to communicate here in this video is the spectrum of consciousness, right? Where you cannot hide in any of the spectrum of consciousness, right? Because that's what becomes a problem. Um, Everything has to be in its appropriate place. Okay, for example, the knowledge of good and bad, of good and bad is evil, right? If you're going to try to be bad, you're going to be evil. If you try to be good, you're going to be evil. You understand evil? Like, because who's trying? Who's who's doing the bidding, right? If it moves from fragmented perspective, it's going to be evil. So in the end, everything has to be kind of neutral, but not in that word that we get to know, neutral. Neutral does not communicate the intensity. For example, if you take the polar opposites and you manage to reorganize them back into the coherence, right? And if they are deeply polarized energies, you're going to create something that is bliss neutrality, right? It is, the intensity is not really communicated here with the word neutral. The other side, like if you have some energies that are sort of more renouncing things, right? Like desperate or like giving up, and it's like, oh, victim kind of thing, right? Also, that is the depression side, right? Like the anxiety side and depression side, the manic depressive type of thing, the narcissist and the empath, right? It's that type of good bad thing, right? When psychologically, when in your psyche you try to be one or the other, in your heart, in your soul, you're going to be evil. That's the definition of evil. Whether it's a little one or it's a big one, it's evil nonetheless. But it's not, what I'm not saying is that uh, now that you're like, oh, everybody's evil now, No, that then you're still taking a side. You still don't get it. Like, how to describe this? Right? If you do not have that knowledge of good and bad, the knowledge of good and bad, then you are not evil. But you are participating in this world. And how you become not evil, you got to take in between, that position in between. You got to be that that stitches those two opposites together, right? Um, you got to speak the truth to both sides. All these spiritual sides and this like kumbaya crowd and all these weaklings who have no spine need to be obviously get a spine, get some boundaries, seek something external and material, acknowledge that fact. And then all these people who are just fixated on narcissism and just achieving and have no that type of selflessness, they need to kind of ease off a little bit, and get and gain that side. And so when you alchemize those energies, you remain neutral, but you don't remain neutralized. The neutrality happens by you being able to take any kind of shape that is necessary to accommodate the energy in your environment. Does that make sense? This is what the Philosopher's Stone is. It is alive. And if you come into the environment and it's missing one particular thing, then you fill in the gaps and then coherence arises. Does that make sense? So that's in essence what I've noticed to be the alchemy in theurgy. It is being able to break down this prima materia, which is a separation, which is taking sides in your heart. Good, this is bad, right? Which is usually what makes you say that this is good and this is bad, right? The negative feeling. And the negative feeling itself in your heart is an interpretation of the mind. It's just a label. And if you unlabel it, then you realize, oh, it's not negative at all. It was just missing, the other side of it. This is why I made this video. In the past video, I said the definition of alchemy is to finding the most negative feeling and connecting with the most positive feeling. This way, you basically, connect to those two dots in your heart, and there's no separation in your heart because there's wholeness. And what is wholeness? Wholeness is the peaceful bliss type of state of consciousness. But that's just what you did right in your heart, like the inner game. You played the inner game right. Okay, that's just one side, and you gain that lux energy. Now, if you stay here and it just is like, oh, I need more and more of this light, then you're gonna lose the in-body experience, right? And so some people are proud of it, like, oh, I'm transcending my body. No, these people who are ascending, and transcending and want to leave their body, I know it may sound like, well, this is like a pinnacle of, human evolution is transcending the body and evolving, and isn't that like what we're here? No, these are not actually those souls who are okay, let's just call them this way. So in Robert Monroe studies and research and all of that, and by the way, like, his take on consciousness is like one of the most comprehensive things I found. Those, for example, 49 levels of consciousness, not a coincidence. The states of consciousness and how they derive, not a coincidence. I observed the same thing through my own experiments, and then I observed many more things that he hasn't, and but they do fit the whole picture. So this mapping of consciousness that he was doing and using it, was excellent. So one of the things he said was that there are people who they come in here just to get out, like, what do they call them? One-timers. Okay? And these are maybe what you may call you may consider like a highly evolved intelligence, but they just come in one time and they're gone. Now, these souls may be one of those souls who are just here to do that, to ascend, transcend, and never come back. Okay? But that's not an indication of the level of evolution of the soul. Because the soul that comes back full circle realizes that there's nowhere to go, that you cannot be living all in the body and you cannot be living all in the soul, that's not the most equilibrated state that you're in, right? The most equilibrated state is to stay in between, and that's what brings me to this idea, the spectrum of consciousness, that you want to living all possible layers of consciousness, and there are quite specific things that can be measured. For example, the frequency and the coherence and incoherence, these are all measured with the brain waves. and electromagnetic oscillations. So you have this beta state, you have the gamma state, you have alpha, theta, delta, and then you have epsilon and 0 point, right? And then you have, of course, the gamma, lambda, and this the ultimate point, the divine spark and ultimate void. And it starts from there, and then it folds itself, and goes into these between states. It's always the background and the foreground, right? That's what consciousness is essentially. And it's important to know that all of these different layers exist as a part of your consciousness, and we're here to live through all of them. Okay? Because so they say, it makes sense to me. I can kind of almost relate to that. I say almost because what I'm trying to say here is that a lot of people are trying to have out-of-body experiences, right? Because out-of-body experience, wow, it's amazing. Like, you get to experience yourself as a free soul, and see how it all works in this consciousness when space is not limited, then when time is not limited, and then when you have remove the limitation of physics, right? Like, for example, in this particular earth, it's this particular physics, and this particular universe, I suppose, right? Because it extends. Now, a part of this universe, there's all sorts of permutations that could happen, but they're all going to follow these laws of simulation, the physics. Okay? These laws of simulations, by the way, they change. They've been proven by Rupert Sheldrake. And, well, he's the one who's talking about this and presenting the proof that the laws of nature evolve and change. The laws of physics, by the way, also Thomas Campbell was talking about this gradual change of the speed of light, which, if that changes, then impacts everything, all the laws of physics, right? So this isn't something that is acknowledged by the current science fully, but you have scientists like Rupert Sheldrake pushing this agenda, and it should be taken in consideration to realize that the laws of physics do evolve. Okay? And then you also have the laws of nature, DNA, and the habits, right? And so these laws of physics may be the slow thing to change, but these laws of nature, for example, may be more changeable. Like, the deeper you go, the slower it changes, but it changes because time is like that. The deepest point is moving the slowest, right? Like a clock. The more shallower, the faster. The more shallower, the faster. The more shallower, the faster. And so the highest change happens at the highest layer, right? Which changes all the time. And on the deepest layer, changes very slowly, but do change. And the ultimate point, nothing changes. So you have something that nothing changes, and then something that changes at the highest speed possible. And that is the state of consciousness which you could describe peaceful bliss. When you have that divine spark, which is the time at the infinite, is when you compact all this time and you experience the time as the most rapidly changing thing. And at the same time, so this is why the infinity and eternality, or something that is infinite and eternal, are different. They work both together to create this phenomena of conscious experience. Okay? But I'm talking about, like, from states that you can experience. Through alchemy, you when you begin to stitch those energies together, you start experiencing. Okay? Now, so when people prefer one of those rather than the whole spectrum, problems will arise, right? Eventually, every soul gonna come to realizations is like, oh, wait a second, I want to live through all of them. I do want to have a body because I get to have in-body experience. I can't do stuff, out of my body, that I can do in my body. And for example, one of the things you say, well, you can simulate the laws of physics, right? And out of your body, just simulate laws of physics and everything. But yeah, you know that at any point you can break them, right? And so that takes away the capacity for the thrill that you can have. So this is why you need this physical reality where you cannot break them, because then it gets that another layer of thrill and danger and stuff like that, right? Because you can't just tap out anytime you want. You're gonna have to fucking go through the whole thing. So that's adds that thrill, and which gives this this other side of pleasure of life, the material pleasure of life. And this is I'm getting to, okay? Hopefully you're still with me. It's very simple. What I'm trying to say is that life happens through the whole spectrum of life, and you cannot select and pick one or the other. From your heart, the whole consciousness projects and plays, and on all these different levels, and we had to live on all of different levels. Eventually, every single soul gonna get to that conclusion, and if you do get to that conclusion, then you're not alienating your body. You're not saying like, oh no, I'm just gonna transcend my body. I'm not gonna eat meat, and I'm just gonna fucking breathe, and I'm not gonna eat nothing, and I'm just going to be pure spirit, which you can do to a certain degree. But what happens? You lose all the physical. First of all, I tell you what happens. Your body shrinks. I want to keep my fucking guns. I don't want to lose them. So, no, this is why these people who just lean towards that spirituality that much, that's why they're so weak and fragile, and and they're not really embodied. They're not embodying it. But for some reason, the group of people on this earth is like praising them or looking at them as something good. Okay, but I don't know where it's just like this. Humans like to do this, like go to the extremes, and but that's not the right, like. Why can't you be embodied in your body and be in your body and be in your soul too, and throughout just normal? Actually, this is what normal is, the sane normal human being, not going too much into the spiritual nonsense, not going too much into the materialism, not going too much into imagination, just using everything appropriately as it's supposed to be used, right? That seems reasonable to me. And of course, it also points out that there is a point in life where it's the best place to be, and you're already there. You already have a body. You already can have out-of-body experiences. You already can alchemize all of these energies. You came here for exactly that, in a world of separation, so those energies in your heart are getting split up, so you could put them back together in your heart. Because if you don't put them back together, then you're siding in your heart. You're becoming fragmented. You're preferring one particular fragment in your heart over the others, and that's where the evil is born. So if your heart must be always whole, and you always need to be alchemizing these energies, so there's this peaceful bliss that's in your heart. If you do this, then you play the inner game right. But that's just the inner game. And so that's what I'm observing, that through alchemizing and not giving too much of that energy and indulging in the pleasures of matter, you get to build up that light, right? But if you stay there and you just say like, oh, that's the thing, when people say like, well, semen retention is the way, and then of course people take this literally and they think that I, people like to take things to the extreme. If one thing was bad, so then it means that that's gonna be good. So then they start retaining semen, and then you become these semen retaining freaking idiots, frustrated chumps, you know. But there's something in between. There's something to this. There's something to enjoy the material life, right? And there's something to sometimes refrain where, for example, like it's more lust based, right? Or it's not. You see what I'm trying to say? When it leans too much of that energy, you can kind of pull back. And so in between, you can stay in between and you can still have that enjoyment in your heart and the pleasure in your body. But when you go way too much into pleasure of the body, then the enjoyment is gone. When you go way just into enjoyment, then that gets also stale because your body is revolting against you. Okay? Which is actually your brain, but you see what I'm trying to say. Your body, your human body, your brain, it doesn't give a fuck about your spirituality. Pardon my French. It wants its needs fulfilled. That's it. That's your that's your that's your machine. That's your vessel. It needs its needs met, and it doesn't care. It doesn't ask more. It doesn't ask less. It needs exactly as it needs. If you, for example, eating too much, then that's not your body's fault. There's something's off in your emotional circuit for you to eat more than your body needs. Okay? But your body wants something, whatever it wants. And sometimes it may be hungry for meat, right? Given the fact that everything else is aligned well and you're playing all these inner games, right? Your body is going to still be, in charge of its functions. It just basically communicates, this is what I want now, this is what I want, and you give it to your body what it needs, right? You don't punish the body. Say, well, oh, it was your fault because you've been greedy. No, it was never the body's fault. So you don't punish the body. And to me, to renounce material pleasures is a punishment of the body. It's this asceticism, right? So then you have this asceticism and then hedonism. Both are evil. And I really want this to become a prevalent knowledge, no pun intended. But the knowledge of good and bad is evil. But the knowledge of duality is good. Or the knowing of duality, or gnosis, or direct knowing is good. Okay? Then whatever your mind needs, you gotta give it to it. Whatever your body needs, you gotta give it to it. So in essence, the way I see it is just like this complete spectrum from seed to germ to flower to fruit, from seed to germ to flower to fruit. And each level has its own needs. And we're just here to, if you fulfill your heart's desire, for that feeling of oneness, then there's, of course, there's a soul desire for like moods. So laughter and all this expression of that joy and enjoyment, right? But that's not enough. Your mind wants a certain specific form. It doesn't want this particular car. It wants that particular car. It doesn't want this particular house. It wants this particular house. You know? So, all right, then that's what mind wants. I guess we gotta give it to what the mind wants, right? And then the body wants things too. Okay? Um, Actually, the body is just a lower part of the mind, because the true body is just sensory motor, circuits. Is not a. You see what I'm trying to say? So your brain is just like a lower part of the mind. It's that, because mind extends from the symbolic type of thinking to abstract thought, the images, the patterns, and then eventually back into the void. And so there's this continuous thing that's going on. And if we play it at the spirit level, then only then we can play it at the soul level, and only then we can play it at the mind level, and only then we can play it at the body level. And that will help you on the next cycle to be even better with this. And that's why we're here. We're not here to transcend the body. We're here to learn to live with the full spectrum of consciousness. That's the truth. Because why is it the truth? It is because it is not rejecting anything. Okay? So it's just a full package. And so anyway, what I'm saying, I know that anyway, what I'm saying is that what am I saying, guys? This is what I'm saying. That we're here to learn the full spectrum experience. No one prevents you from experiencing like the deepest layers of consciousness right now. Not even through drugs, through practice, just like what Robert Monroe did, through tuning your consciousness. And if you're alchemizing the energies at the heart, because look, when people do these mind exercises, sometimes like, you gotta visualize this and this and that. Usually it's stemming from somebody who had that experience, which was real. And now somebody heard of it and is trying to copy and creating a method out of this. It's an illusion, it's not real, and if you do get the results, it's not because of it. And even then, if you do get results, they're probably going to be kind of skewed and tainted and and whatnot. Why am I saying this? It is because seed first, germ then, flower third, and then fruit fourth, right? So when people just go straight to flower, what kind of flower are they going to create if they don't have seed or germ? It's going to be some artificial, abominable flower, which was going to be their idea that they tried to create. Logically, okay? You can see that happening. So you want to go to the flower, okay, great. Go to the seed first. You're going to have to alchemize all of these energies. Then, in order for you to, when you feel that peaceful, blissful energy, just that light, you can connect your mind to it and become like envisioning that. It's like, what's that feeling looks like? And you're going to come up with something like, a kaleidoscopic play that sometimes people report in DMT or mushroom experiences, like that 7 densities before the patterns have been formed. It's just like a soup of creation that's just always going. And it's just like the most enjoyable thing that you could ever experience. But when you connect it with the senses, right? Now you see the feeling as a sight or as a tone or as a whatever. But the point of it all here is to connect the senses and the mind, the sensory motor system and the mind system, to interpret or pick up on that feeling that is there, that is happening. It may come as the colors or whatever, right? And as you're doing that, you're already kind of dreaming what you're feeling. And that is how I made some videos before, save me from the monster, take me to the moon. That's pretty much the mythology of the alchemy, of going through and doing the right thing and unlocking those fears, and then bringing it to the moon. And that is, you see, and everything else, when somebody may have that experience and say, okay, well, this is what you do now. You imagine this and imagine this, and this is going to work. No, that's, again, you're trying to imitate it. You see. But as you go into the world of form, from this primordial soup of energy, you're going to have to give it a form. It's not going to be, and then what kind of form it wants to take, that's just going to be your desire, right? It would be like, well, I want to visit this particular space-time reality, okay? There's a particular form that mind wants to experience, and off you go. So there is a particular capacities of your consciousness which you can, like the construct of consciousness. Maybe that's not even a good word. It's just like, it seems that that's how just the innate universal principles of consciousness that possibly never change. And you always have like some sensory motor system. You always have the mind system. And then you have the soul system. Body, mind, soul. Of course, that's just like a kind of a spectrum. But the experience of having an out of body experience, or like why you can't just simply now start dreaming at the same time that you're in the physical, right? With the practice you can, but there's a limit here, that veil that is created for the purpose of thrill and all that. But that limitation that is imposed, it just does not allow like the upper bubble of consciousness, the heavens and and hell kind of come back together naturally, and somebody has to have some action taken for them to reunite, and that's the game. So it's just part of the game. But you do have these membranes, right? You do have these membranes that are necessary to split the mind, the body, and the soul, right? For the sake of the game happening. They don't really exist, because if you're in a free state of consciousness, you can be whatever you want to be, go wherever you want to go, right? That is completely liberated state. But when you are not in that state, the membranes do exist, and so you have to play everything right. Okay? And that it creates the vessel, which is your body, and brain, for example, is the lower part of, lower part of the mind that does these mundane tasks and calculates things and stuff like that. That's lower part of the mind that is in the body, right? And then of course there's body in the mind too, because like if you start sensing something when your imagination is kind of real, then you brought your body into the mind, so to speak, right? As and so in body experience is bringing your mind in body, and out of body experience is bringing your body in the mind. Now people who always live in the body, they don't have in body experience. You understand? To have in the body experience, one must be spending time out of the body, because then there is a perspective that, well, I am in this avatar playing this game. It is very actually interesting perspective. It is quite thrilling, but it's also there's that peace there. But for the soul being not knowing that, you know, you're actually out of the body, and in this particular moment you're in the body. Anyway, what I'm trying to say here is, when you live like that and you know that you're having in-body experience, your behavior changes completely, and there's a lot of appreciation of these characters that you see, these dream characters that are happening all around you, these game characters. You know? And this is basically the healthiest uh, approach to life that I've ever had. It is not it's not renunciating, and it's not, you know, hating life and loving spirit. You know, hating matter and loving spirit. No. But it's also not so clinging to it that, you know, there's seriousness taken off, like the edges are smoothed out. But it matters, right? It matters. The matter matters. It matters if your body is healthy. It matters if, like, people that you love bodies are healthy. You know, like, you care about that stuff. It's part of the game, because you would, if you're serious about playing game, you know, like, you would take care of whatever the purpose of the game, right? You're taking this game seriously and sincerely, right? But there's a balance between sincerity and seriousness. And so basically everything that I've been through, everything that I've explored, I came up with this. I mean, you know, and anybody who would do that would come up with the same thing. But the conclusion, ultimate conclusion, is that the spectrum of consciousness, like, loving the spectrum of consciousness, not one particular part. If you love the entire thing, you'll see how everything fits perfectly. And if they don't fit perfectly, it's because you asked for the game, so you can put them together, so they do fit perfectly. You know? So there's this type of way of living life, and being and living and enjoying the full spectrum of consciousness. And I think this is the only way to really fully enjoy life. Otherwise, you'll see it as fucked up. You're gonna want to leave it, or you say, well, it's still fucked up. I have to control it, and, you know, and put these rules and these evil people, right? But if you remain neutral, well, it doesn't mean nurtured. Nurtured is basically are these people who, all in the spirit, but body is not important. Like, like these depersonalized people who call themselves enlightened. A lot of them, all of them. You understand? All of them. Uh, Whoa. What is that? I don't know if you saw it, but I tried to take a picture of this big bird that came over here. The big black bird. Okay, so when everything is integrated, then only then things are not evil. So it takes you to this point where you do understand that if a person is rejecting any part of consciousness, that's going to be kind of, skewed towards one side or the other, and in a way that's going to move things out of balance. But you don't see it as bad because you see things from the perspective of the whole. Okay, so you're not fighting evil this way, because you cannot win evil this way by by being good. You're not going to resolve bad by being good. It's just like you create more bad by trying to be good. And that's what happens with these people who call themselves empaths. It's like, I'm such a goody, and look, everybody's abusing me. Well, because you're giving your soul energy away. And this is why the narcissist even exists. Narcissists would not exist if there wasn't for these gullible, goody people. Now, with the exception of the if somebody is how to say, naive and is not in a position to discern, then of course, you see what I'm trying to say, like that's not a somebody has to protect the people who cannot protect themselves. That's what I'm trying to say. But people who can protect themselves, but they choose not to, and they choose to do all these stuff, and then they blame narcissists. Is like, okay, you're a grown ass woman, okay, you call yourself empath or whatever, you call yourself good, but you giving it to fucking evil schmucks, so what do you want? You are evil, so no, you know you're doing this yourself and then whining and complaining, and you're creating that. All these OnlyFans girls, all of these who just give it to just anybody are creating that, right? So of course, don't come up to me and cry that this is happening to you, because you are in the position to completely change it. So no. But if somebody gets abused because they don't have capacity to protect themselves, okay, that's a different story. But that excludes all the grown ass people who do have the capacity for that. Okay? But again, from this perspective, you recognize people playing these roles and playing these games, whining about something that they can change. It's like part of the whole circus. Like, I'm not interested anymore, I should say, because before I was just kind of getting frustrated, which then if I get frustrated, then it puts me off balance. And so the reason I was getting frustrated, because there was something there that needed to be aligned. And the more I aligned, the more I see that, like, oh, there's no need for that. And you can see clearly that, okay, the characters are playing their part. They don't actually want to be quote unquote saved. The whining and complaining is their thing. This is this victimhood. It's like, if I just surrender, I'm gonna have to handle life. That submission to the darkness. Um, you see, people who don't want that anymore, they don't behave like that. Okay. Um, and there's something about it, like in people, when the soul is ready to say, like, well, there's got to be a better way to live this life. Then there's something opens up, and they start looking for people like me who are alchemizing these energies, which is the only way out of this mess. And you get to be in that neutrality, seeing that, okay, in all, everything is kind of neutral. And that neutrality gives peace to your heart. And then when you have that neutrality in your heart, then you can play all sorts of mind games and body games. Whatever the mind desires, whatever the body desires, right? So full spectrum of consciousness. And if you end up there, then that's it. There's no searching anymore. It's just that there is this type of life happening, and you get to the point where, like, you're fine with this happening forever and ever and ever. And that's what they're gonna call it. Anyway, I don't want to spill too many beans, because you have to discover things too by yourself. But I'm just giving like the framework of it. So there. And there is a type of I don't know. I mean, it's quite obvious, right? Like, it's actually the most reasonable thing to see that, oh, it has to go in a full circle of life, and we have to care for the seed, for the germ, for the flower, and for the fruit. It's just kind of obvious, right? And we cannot neglect any of these. And there is this type of in-between thing, this external reward. That doesn't mean just material, but it is something external. And there's this internal thing. And we're trying to connect the dots internally, which gives us this light thing in our hearts. And then connect the dots externally, which gives us that external light. And they have to be in balance. Because if it's just too much light, external light, then it becomes evil, right? If it's too much internal light, then ironically that also kind of becomes evil, even because it's not holy, because it's becoming too much of a spirit and not matter. If you stay in between, you're golden. So you gather Lush, which is external, connecting the dots, and you gather Lux, which is internal, connecting dots. Okay, and in that balance, you get to have all of these material pleasures that are balanced out with this spiritual joy. And you see what I'm trying to say? The more spiritual joy you have, the more material pleasures you can afford. If you go way too much in a material pleasure, and if you don't have sufficient internal joy, it's going to take you out of the zone. And this is what I've noticed. This is where like I arrived, I suppose, uh, in that arrival, kind of communicating to me that, boy, everything's already happening. As supposed to be just live life throughout and don't uh, discriminate and don't pick and choose whether you like more material, astral or causal or whatever. These are all just facets of life. It's happening already, and I guess between sacred and secular, right? I don't know if you see the point. I mean, because feeling wise, you can see it. There's something that is like inside your heart, and all these people who go on these retreats and they just go like, "Oh, we gotta just be in the heart, only in the heart." In the heart. Okay, no, too much. Yes, this is important. It's important, but also out too, externally, materially. And if you have a lot of light inside, then you can afford to balance yourself out with a lot of material stuff. But and I don't know exactly now. I'm just watching how it works, but it seems like you can almost like purchase it. But if you get that without internal light, then it's forced. So it's almost like you get to have these internal gems, but with these internal gems, you can quote unquote buy material pleasure. And I think that what happens there is that material pleasure enhances these gems. These gems enhance material pleasure. Anyway, this is where I am right now, and I'm actually watching it a little bit deeper in consciousness to see what the fuck is exactly going on with that accumulation of that energy internally and externally, and how do they relate with each other. Because I'm very curious and very interested about that energy, and it seemingly there's a storage of energy, the exchange of energy, right? And how to live in this continuous exchange of energy, and taking one energy and converting it into another one, and then that energy converting into another one, and then fully coming full circle back again. And so this type of continuous stream of energy that is sort of feeding on itself, and it's just like a nuclear reactor that never ends, really. And so the cups are full in all the facets of life, and the overspill goes back into the primordial cup. From this primordial cup spills out into the um you know the mind, the mana energy, mind energy, or vitality, which is body energy. um those are the energies that are necessary for you to function, but you cannot go overboard, right? When it reaches capacity, you can't go overboard. You gotta now use some of that energy for that, for you know and this is where you get to alchemy, magic, and might, all three in one play. You see how it all works? If you indulge too much on the pleasure, but you've done no work, like on in the heart, and you have like a dark heart, and you seek pleasure, then it's glazed turd. You see, that's what's going on. But when it's a glazed cake, it's all good. You still want to glaze it, right? That's your material pleasures. So anyway, just find the balance in the spectrum of consciousness, and keep yourself between this external pleasure and internal joy. That's my conclusion. I think actually, like, it's of course like it's easy to criticize somebody, but I'm not really like criticizing. I'm just noticing that um, we need more people who are just completely together at equilibrium. You see, not the ones who just like criticize the government and says like, "Oh, you guys are just like really evil." Okay, are you doing anything about it, or are you just like, you know, all you do is this alchemy, but you're not engaging in might at all, right? So aren't you kind of creating this other side, right? But if you're in between, if you're just like, well, I'm enjoying my pleasures of life, the ones that I want, these are my pleasures of life, and I'm paying my dues in my heart, then I'm balanced. I'm not contributing. At least I'm not contributing to the disbalance of the system. Does that make sense? Because some of the things that you want in life are yours. And if you say no to that, material things, and say, look, I'm just going to be, enlightened, and I say, okay, well, you just contributed to unbalance by trying to be goody goody. It's not why you came here. You came here to freaking kick ass and take names. So, okay? Never go to goody goody. In fact, you want to be as badass as possible in the world of matter and as good as possible in the world of spirit. Someone asked me this question about the selfishness and selflessness. And I said, well, everything has its own purpose. Selfless in the heart, and then selfish in the body. And that works because then you get surplus when other people in problems. You get to be in a position to help. And if you're selfless and selfish over there and selfless and over here, you're going to recognize like, okay, if I put that energy here, is that really going to help a person, or just going to put them, or just going to feed the demon? Because if I'm going to feed the demon, I'm not going to do this. So I'm going to have to, use a different type of energy for this particular situation. And then you put the energy when, if you put that energy that way, then the energy is going to flow in the right way, right? Does that make sense? If a person is wired in a specific way and you try to help them by giving them energy, whatever, it just might be money or whatever, then it's just going to reinforce the same patterns that they have before. This is why you don't feed the people who, the beggars on the street or whatever. Because if they're going to spend it on drugs and stuff like that. So you have to rewire the system. And then if you put the energy through it, you're going to get a good result. And it's a balance between selfishness and selflessness. You cannot be selfish and you cannot be selfless. You have to be something in between. That's just like, that's it, guys, man. That's it. I'm gonna do more one-on-one sesh ins. I think I'm honestly like I arrived already at like an ultimate conclusion. So I don't know if I can say anything more about this thing. I'm just gonna put everything in my book, and I'm gonna spend more time just doing the things in all the facets of life. And as you can see, you you cannot help a person who does not start from whole perspective. And that's why I think I'm not gonna do that. I'm gonna make sure that like is the person starting from the whole perspective, which is what whole consciousness calibration is. And if they're starting from there, then I can work with that. I think they used to call them like initiates. It just means that the person zeroed out their consciousness by themselves and calibrated themselves into that 0 point. Flashed. Sometimes they call them initiates and stuff like that. But as you can see, everything's gonna be distorted if you don't have this perspective. Nothing will be understood, and a lot of people just make fool and clowns out of themselves by trying to understand this thing, and they're not coming from the source. So it just becomes like abominable thing that they do. It's like when they actually try to turn physical lead into physical gold. You see what I'm trying to say? That is, of course, retarded, because that was just not referring to that at all, ever, obviously. And obviously the things on the dark side as well. When people do it physically, that's also ridiculous. I like to watch Mystery Boys. This is like a new podcast, and it's super funny. But like that's best way to see like the ridiculousness of how people go when they are just retarded, and they try to understand something that through the perspective of matter when it's nothing to do with that. And why are they trying to do that? Is because they don't have capacity for the deeper spectrum of consciousness. I mean, technically they do have capacity, but they did not go there. And people cannot go there that fast, because like I said, this is what denominates the soul being a hyalic, psychic, or pneumatic. It is what kind of sphere of influence they have. Okay, and if a person has that little small sphere of influence, they're just gonna play in their sandbox, and nothing's really going on, but it's just like a belief system, and it's just hallucinations and illusions and nonsense. And you just gotta believe people having this tea party with no tea in it. It's funny. That's the best thing that you can get out of this. It's hilarious and it's funny. All right, guys. Peace, and I'll see you in the next one.